What do we do now? Sam shivered, shaking snow off of his feathers. Violet had given them a blanket and what food she could spare, but it did little more than keep the wind from cutting them like a knife. We go west to the pirates' fort. Pirates. You want to put yourself to the mercy of pirates in your condition. Before Theos could answer, he heard a roar in the distance over the howling wind that gave him goosebumps, followed by a piercing scream. Was that a bear's roar? Theos asked as he turned to the direction the sound came from. Yes, we should go, Theos, Sam replied, and that scream, it sounded like the panthers from the southern swamp. Theos said with that familiar look in his eye. Yeah, Theos, you are not. Sam began, but Theos had already started running in the direction of the sound. Sam flew from his shoulder, changing from bird to human, and blocked his path. It sounds like a fight, Sam, Theos declared, almost pleading. A fight we have no reason to intervene in, Sam replied. Did you not hear what Violet said? It was members from the Bear clan that killed Jade. So what? You want to kill one of them in return, blood for blood. The way of the Aranum, Theos replied as he changed to a fox and clumsily ducked under Sam before retaking his human form. The way of fools, Sam yelled as he changed back to a bird and flew after him. Theos stopped short as he saw the carcass of a large beast that looked as though it had been torn in two. Then there was a flurry of snow nearby and a clash of steel. A panther with a white and cool gray fur was fighting off a bear bigger than any Theos had ever seen before. After a few more exchanges of sword blows, the leopard broke through the bear's defense and cut his side. The bear dropped his sword and made the change with a sweep of his massive paw. He knocked the panther to the side. The panther made the change as well, but as she did, the bear rushed her, flipping her on her side once more. The bear raised his paw to strike her again, but as he did, Theos jumped on his back and wrapped his arms around the bear's neck, thrusting his sword up through the bear's throat and into his skull. The bear started to reach for Theos, but his arms failed him and fell to his sides as his knees buckled under his weight. The bear crashed into the snow and twitched a bit as his blood stained the snow a dark crimson. As Theos unsheathed his sword from the bear's jaw, Sam landed between him and the leopard, changing from bird to man and drawing a dagger from his waist, carefully eyeing the leopard as she circled the two. Theos, watch yourself, Sam commanded, turning with the leopard as she reached her sword and made the change to retrieve it. Relax, Raven, I am grateful for your young friend's help, and I have more than enough of a meal now. Slaying the two of you would be both rude and a waste of energy. Panther, wait, Theos called out as she turned back in the direction of the large carcass. I am a member of the snow leopard tribe. You would do well to remember that, little fox. My name is Ashira of the North Wind. Ashira, then, you use your sword with your left hand. How observant, Ashira replied sarcastically. Can you teach me, Theos asked, to wield a sword left-handed? Yes, and how to hunt here in the snow? You are a fox of the snow. Did your father not teach you to hunt? My father was a fox of the snow, but I hail from the forest. Ashira's expression changed as Theos said this. Oh, and why does a fox from the forest want to learn to use a sword left-handed? My right arm is hurt, I can't. You are lying to me, Ashira said, cutting Theos off. Theos stopped and tried reading Ashira as Sam tensed up. It was as if she had not yet decided what she thought of him. Though she did seem to be disappointed with him, there was no thought of violence. You are not from the forest, and while you did save me from that bear, I am returning the favor by sparing your life and the life of your feathered friend here. I owe you nothing, so if you want me to teach you, I have conditions. The first being that you can never lie to me for any reason. Sam turned to Theos, looking for some indication it was safe to drop his guard, and Theos nodded in approval, so Sam returned his dagger to the sheath on his hip. Understood, Theos said, feeling embarrassed. It was as if Ashira had read him, and while he spent his life reading others, he did not like the feeling of possibly being read himself. Is this what Sam feels like all the time? He wondered to himself. Very well. Take the fur of that bear. You will need real clothes if you plan on living through a snowstorm here. Then come and eat with me. Theos did as he was instructed, but he found it difficult to use his skinning knife. Sam began to help, but Ashira growled in protest. "You cannot fight his battles, Raven. I am a crow. My name is Sam of the Westwood, and the boy is my responsibility. Would you fight me for him?" Ashira giggled as a test of Sam's loyalty to his charge. "To the death if I must," Sam replied, reaching again for the dagger at his hip. "Bravery in the face of unfavorable odds. That is uncommon among your clan," Ashira said condescendingly. "Very well, Sam was it. If you can manage not to freeze to death, I will tolerate your company. But no interfering. He wants to learn to use his left hand. This is how he learns." Ashira turned again to eat, leaving Theos to complete the painstaking task of skinning the behemoth left-handed. Once he had finished, the three of them carved up the bear's meat and picked the original carcass Theos had found clean. Then, with a sense of urgency, the three of them headed north before they were found by scavengers or other bears. Ashira demanded Theos tell her the truth of who he was as they walked. Theos confided in her that he was the true king of the desert, feeling that he could trust her. "Awfully brave or foolish to be here in the north. If the fangs and claws find you, there will be trouble. Are the snow leopards not a part of the council?" Theos asked as he thought of the bear again. It had been a clan of white fur. He thought conflict between clans with white fur was forbidden in the north. "Yes and no. We are considered a clan of white, but we have little to do with the council of fangs and claws. We are more like wanderers of the far north. Guardians, if you will." "What is there to guard in the far north?" Sam asked. "There is barely anything at the frost line, much less all the way up here in this frozen waste. A monument to the resolve of furred clans everywhere." Ashira replied in a whispered, reverent tone. "I will take you there if you would like. We will see if you really are a son of the north," Ashira said as she put her arms behind her head and stretched playfully to see Theo's response as they walked. Theo smiled, welcoming the challenge, but Sam was less than thrilled at the idea of going further into the frozen wastelands. The three traveled deep into the north, far past the villages of the frost line. They stopped in a village and traded for some thread made from sinew, and Theos used it to craft the pelt he had simply wrapped himself in into proper clothes. Sam found warm attire as well, and the three continued their trek north. It had been 3 days since the last village when Ashira stopped suddenly and turned to Theos with a smile. "Follow me, I have something I want to show you," she had said with a smirk as she changed to a leopard and bid them to follow her. "There is a storm coming," Sam cawed through chattering beak as he glided from Theo's shoulder and took his human form. It was too cold here to fly, so Sam had barely stretched his wings at all, and his arms and feet were stiff from the cold. Theos had made a pocket on the shoulder of the clothes he made from the bear's fur, a very rough patchwork, and Sam had been sitting in it with only his head poking out, trying his best not to freeze. "We need to dig in and bed down," he continued as the sky began to darken. "Come now, bird. Life is not about weathering the storm," Ashira replied. "Theos, we have to make a shelter or we are going to freeze." "I am going to freeze," Sam pleaded. "Then turn back," Ashira commanded. "You are probably the first bird to come this far north in 1,000 years. There is no shame in turning back." Sam gave Ashira a hateful glance, and Ashira returned it as Theos spoke. "Maybe we can find a place to wait this storm out. You really are Southern Fox, I suppose. No discipline, no resolve, and no sense of adventure." Ashira shrugged. She plucked a nerve, and Theos knew that was her intent, but he played along, curious about what he saw in her eyes. While her eyes had been hazy before, now they were blank, and Theos could not read her intentions at all. "Sam, go back," Theos said as he huddled next to him in an effort to keep the wind from hitting him directly. "Theos, she's going to freeze us to death. War. We can find someone else to teach ya, you," Sam pleaded through chattering beak. Theos watched as Ashira walked a bit further and looked over her shoulder to see what he would do. She was a sight to behold with the snow swirling around her. Theos thrust his hand to the ground, and the snow gave way, and rose into a dome, revealing the frozen grey stone beneath it. Then Theos took off his bear skin, still stained with the blood of its previous owner, and gave it to Sam. "Change and wrap up in this. Stay here, and I will come back for you, Sam, I promise." Sam begrudgingly did as he was told, and left Theos to follow Asherah alone. The two walked another mile or so in silence, and the storm began to subside. Now that Theos was exposed to it, the air seemed to get colder and colder as they went. He took his fox form, hoping his own fur would help, but the wind made it feel like a wave of knives washed over him with every gust. His limp did not help him either, as he stumbled clumsily in the deep snow, struggling to keep up with Asherah. They came to a place where the terrain was covered in large icy blue boulders. Theos stopped for a moment to inspect one, but upon further inspection, and much to his horror, he realized it was a body mummified by the cold. Theos looked into the eyes of the beast in the ice and saw his last moments etched in his mummified mind. He was expecting to see that the beast had been overwhelmed by the cold as he feared he might be. But Theos was surprised to see fire, feel the terror he had only seen in the eyes of his prey, and the screams all around him. The memory faded as Theos pulled his head away and closed his eyes hard. "Come on, it is just a bit further," Asherah called out as she turned and beckoned him onward. Theos and Asherah came to a large mound and walked through a small round opening. Once inside, there was complete darkness, and Theos could hear the clicking of stones as Asherah struggled to light something. "Where are we?" Theos began, but as he finished, a small line of fire began to wrap around the walls of the dome, revealing a grotesque sight. 4 giant mummies of beasts Theos had never seen before. All 4 had long tusks, and they were locked in the ribcage of a 5th beast that Theos recognized even in its decaying condition as the corpse of a dragon. He had only seen one once, as they did not often leave the walls of their cities. It flew over him and Sam with blinding speed, and if it had not been for its massive shadow, he would have probably missed it entirely. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Asherah said as Theos stood in awe. "Not exactly my idea of beauty," Theos replied as he studied the gruesome statues, their bones still draped with rotting flesh, matted fur, and scales. "It is called the Grove of Hope," Asherah replied. "My people are the keepers of this place, its lore, the story of how the Council of Fangs and Claws was formed, that this frozen wasteland was once a lush jungle that stretched from the frost line in the south to as far north as anyone has ever been. It was inhabited by giant clans of fur like these, with the power of Sententia and the tranquility of Sophia." Asherah paused and ran her hand through one of the giant's ancient frozen fur and looked into the eyes of the dragon that hung above. Then the dragons came, demanding tribute and fealty. Even my ancestors were no match for them. Eventually there was a huge battle and thousands were lost. In that battle, those 4 giants proved that dragons were not the gods they claimed to be by impaling that dragon. They gave their lives to prove the godlike dragons could be killed. "What happened to them? The clans of fur?" Theos asked, still marveling at the sculpture of ice and flesh. The Phoenix saw an opportunity to take out 2 threats to their supremacy at once. They cast a spell of permafrost to drive all scales out of the north. The cold mummified these bodies, and now they stand as a reminder to all of us that even dragons can be made to bleed and die. After the War of Feather and Scale, most of the clans of fur left the north. The ones that stayed formed the Council of Fangs and Claws that enforced the snow-white peace of the north. And they tell stories about how one day a son of the north will break the Phoenix curse, and it will once again become the land of fur. This is what it means to believe in something, Theos. This is the resolve of the north. Theos felt Asherah's breath on his neck now. He turned, barely able to react as Asherah pounced on him. Hours later, the 2 of them lay on the cold stone, both breathing heavily and covered in scratches and bite marks. "That was," Theos panted, "me paying you back proper." Asherah jeered. "Not bad for your first lesson," she continued with a grin. "So the snowstorm, that was you. And you only brought me here too." Asherah nodded to Theos with a rosy smile. "I thought you might enjoy learning a bit about where you come from, and I had to get rid of that overprotective bird somehow." Ashira giggled. "Two birds with one stone, if you will." Theos gave a deep laugh as Ashira continued. "Speaking of, we should probably go get him. He must be worried sick and frozen half to death by now." As they emerged from the mound, Theos was almost blinded by the light reflecting of the snow. They found Sam and traveled south back to the villages of the far north. Theos hunted with Ashira for 8 years, learning the arts of the snow leopard clan. Ashira made him endure the sting of hunger and its maddening effects. She taught him to endure the icy winds of the north and how to heighten his senses when dulled by the cold. Then one day the rumors reached the north about the death of a dragon and the roar of war that could be heard all around the realm.